Well, welcome this evening, folks. Tonight we're talking about Genesis 1:1 to 2:3. We are going to let's see if I can well, let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I think I've just done it. Trying to get okay. Well, we'll see if it works. No, am I sharing? Yeah, I'm sharing. Okay. So we So we're talking about Genesis 1:1 to 2:3 this evening. The first creation story. We'll talk about, oh, my eyes so sore today. We'll talk about why we call it the first creation story. There's a second creation story from in 2:4 to the end of chapter 3. We'll talk about why uh, it's a separate creation story when we talk more about it next time we meet. And one thing I want to do, haven't done it yet, is invite someone on to talk about what it means to be made in the image of God and kind of a ministry related thing. Uh, I'm going to tell you who because I haven't asked them yet, but that's something I've decided to do. And we'll uh, we'll get to that when they agree or not to come on. So Genesis 1:1 to 2:3. That's the first creation story. It's sort of a prologue to the book. It falls out or precedes, rather, to be more specific, the Toledoth structure that we talked about before when we introduced ourselves to the large sections of the book of Genesis. There's the Toledoth structures, or these are the generations are that are structuring phenomenon in Genesis in both the first section 1 to 11 and the section 12 to 50. 12 to 50. Uh, Genesis 1:1 to 2:3 precedes that. So this one is what we would call the priestly um, creation story. Why do we call it the priestly creation story? Like I said, it's the prologue to the book outside the Toledoth structuring that is in Genesis 1 to 11, 12 to 50. Has many vocabulary linkages with the book of Leviticus and other priestly material. It's been a, I think we can confidently identify a priestly strand of material in Genesis. I don't think we can do more in the Pentateuch, rather. I In Genesis we can't do any more than that. We can't ferret out any more different sources. I don't think, at least not confidently. And in the Pentateuch as a whole, we would have the priestly source. We would have Deuteronomy, which seems to be its own thing. And then we would have, who knows, with the rest of the Pentateuch. but we have a priestly source, and this is their creation story. Has a lot of vocabulary linkages with the book of Leviticus and other priestly material. And how it depicts the world is as a cosmic temple and people as priest kings within that temple. It does that specifically. Get some eye drops or something. Specifically, when it is talking about the humans being made in the image of God. It's a royal, kind of like a royal priesthood image in the ancient Near East. It's picking that up here in Genesis. It does that again in Genesis 2, 4 to the end of chapter 3. And so this is one of the things that both Genesis in their own unique ways, both Genesis 1, 1 to 2, 3, and then 2, 4 to the end of 3, the second creation story, that's something they both stress, is this idea that the world is a cosmic temple and people are priest kings within that temple. As I said, it falls outside of the Toledo structure. It precedes it. Here we have those. Starts off at 2-4. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the heavens, earth, and made the earth and the heavens. Well, the thing is, in every other instance of this, when in 1 to 11, and then in 12 to 50, it's preceding the narrative it is introducing. And so chances are, even though some people interpret it this way, chances are it's not referring back to 1, 1 to 2, 3, but it's starting the first chapter, if you will, of the book after the prologue, which is the first creation story. So we have 2-4, 5-1, 6-9, 10-1, 11 to 10. We have the generations that introduce the narrative to follow. So how have believers, Christians, interpreted this book? This isn't exhaustive, but this is some ways that it's been interpreted. And I'll talk about my approach as well. One way it's interpreted is number 1, creation science, young earth. If we understand, and what this says is, if we understand the science correctly, we will understand that the earth is, that science comports exactly with what the Bible's talking about here. And if we understood science correctly, it would link up, and we have a young earth. The things like the Creation Museum it's either Kentucky or Tennessee, I forget which one. Answers in Genesis and the like are tack on the book of Genesis. The next approach, like I said, this is not exhaustive, but some popular Christian approaches to the book of to this first creation story. Um, Old Earth Day Age, where and this is really an attempt to. It's one thing that the first two have. In fact, in some ways, the first three approaches have in common is trying to have the creation stories, especially this first one, second one as well, though, comport with science. Um, the first approach has to do with, okay, if you understood the science, then we would see that, yes, it's literal 7 day creation. The earth is several thousands of years old, not billions of years old. And we've already mentioned some of the groups connected with that. Two, Old Earth Day Age, trying to do the same thing in its own way as number one. And that is, but their approach to that is that, yes, when the Bible talks about a day, it really means age. Um, and and so it comports with science. The apparent age of the earth and the universe, evolution and the like, all fits in that. So it's day age. Um, so we'd have the evolution one maybe be this kind of thing, fit into this number two category, perhaps intelligent design. It's been a long time since I've read any of that. I'm not sure about the current authors as far as dealing with that. And but as far as we have group reason to believe, especially with Hugh Ross, an astrophysicist who tries to show how the Bible comports with what modern science is saying about the universe. The gap theory is interesting. Number three here. The gap theory is interesting. It tries to do both because honestly, the a day is a day is a day. I mean, that's what the text is meaning to communicate. So day age, uh, no. The gap theory, though, tries to have it both ways. It says, in the beginning, the Lord God created the heavens and the earth. And then it goes, the earth was formless and void and dark. The Spirit of God hovered above the deep, and darkness covered the face of the earth. Those are the first two verses of Genesis. Between 1 and 1 and 1, 2, we have some cataclysm that really is what we see in 1, 2, and following is really a recreation, not the first creation. And so what gap theory is trying to do is trying to really do what Genesis 1 is saying, that the day is a day, Um, and two, trying to sync it up with the fact that the Earth seems a lot older than 6 or 7 thousand years old. Yeah. So that's the gap theory. Really uh, popularized by the Scofield Bible, kind of like the one of the early champions of dispensationalism, and I think in America. I don't, not for sure. Uh, Scofield Study Bible, gap theory. Now we get to the two areas where I spend most of my time, um, which is more of a literary approach and a comparative ancient Near Eastern approach. Because what we notice when we compare Genesis 1 with ancient Near Eastern texts, it's very much like an ancient Near Eastern creation story. A lot of the same motifs. And it's also like a temple creation, a temple creation story, temple building text, uh, where we have, for example, our closest analog to this in the Hebrew Bible is the tabernacle, instructions to build the tabernacle in Exodus. Where what we see is that the rooms, and the two scholars I draw on mostly for this is Gordon Wenham, who's a Christian Old Testament scholar, wrote the Word Biblical Commentary on Genesis, and uh, and then John Levinson, a uh, a Jewish Old Testament scholar from Harvard. I think he's still there. And his article, Temple and the World. It's dated, it's probably about a 50-year-old article, but still just tremendous. And what we notice there is that the kind of like the rooms of the cosmic temple were built first. Sky, water, and land are the three spaces. What Gordon Wenham calls domains, and then 4, 5, and 6 are the rulers of those domains. And how John Levinson would describe in his article is we have the rooms of the temple, and then the the furnishings and inhabitants of those rooms. Similar to what, and that is capped in day 6 with the investiture of the priest king, the high priest, who is in charge of the temple. And then 7 is the Sabbath day when God rests, called framework creation. Very much based on two things. It's based on a literary reading of the text. Because what my dissatisfaction with other approaches is that it never really gets to saying what's the message of the text for believers. You know, it, so much arguing over whether about uh, young Earth, old Earth, whatever, that they really, in a lot of cases, forget to interpret the text. Okay, what's this text saying? Um, and what it's saying is that, like what I said here, depicts the world as a cosmic temple and people as priest kings within that temple. And so, what do priest kings do? They ascertain God's will and carry it out in the world. And it sort of turns, I don't have a slide on this, so I'm just going to talk for a little bit. It sort of turns, or more than sort of, it does turn, kind of like the idea of the ancient Near Eastern king, especially the Assyrian king, but it can apply to other kings as well, who extend the God's rule. There, in the Assyrian case, Ashur, Babylonian Marduk, whoever, um, through conquest, through treaties, and through temple building. Promulgate the God's rule in the earth. We kind of turned that on its head in Genesis 1, where people are asked to be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. And when we talk more about the image of God more specifically, we'll delve into that more. So we're going to put a pin in that now. So what we can tell is that some statements. God has blessed the created world and told its creatures to be fruitful and multiply. God has pronounced his creation good. God has made people in the image of God and put them in charge of non-human creation. And when we talk about the second creation story, we'll see how those counterbalance each other. Genesis 1, we're to rule, subdue, and rule. Genesis, the second creation story, we're to guard and work, or keep and serve. Just different ways you can pronounce the couple of terms that are translated here. But the terms here, kavash and radah, subdue and rule. To be in God's image means to be God's representative and to carry out his will. The goal of creation is to engage in Sabbath, i.e., glorify and worship God. And for that, we'll leave it off for tonight. Sometime later this week, probably Thursday or Friday, probably Thursday, we'll talk about the second creation story in kind of a cursory fashion like we did tonight. Then we'll spend another section, a third section on this, on the image of God. So with that, I'll let you go this evening. You folks have a good evening and a happy new year. Bye for now.